Right. I would like to welcome you all back to the FRAVR today, or if you just joined us, then welcome. This is the second talk we're privileged to be part of today. The first talk really broadened the scope for VR and other technologies to applications such as marketing and various other business aspects. The second talk is going to bring it back to gaming per se. So we are very, very fortunate to have with us Erasmus Brosdau. He's a creative lead at AMD and formerly art director at Crytek right here in Frankfurt. And he's going to give us a glimpse of the potential and challenges for constructing gaming experiences in VR, and particularly on incorporating narration, telling a good story, how to construct that in 360 degrees. So thank you very much for being here,
yep.
And the stage is yours.
Thank you. So yeah, hello and welcome to this talk. So yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. I pretty much continue with this and just tell a little bit more about myself before I explain what we are pretty much talking about. So I was born in Lübeck, in a marzipan town, if some of you know this. And right now I'm the creative lead at AMD. And before that, as you can see, a couple of art director jobs at Crytek, and was also art director for all cinematics of Star Citizen. And before that, a lot of traditional 3D modeling roles. So actually come from an artist background where I not only tell stories, but actually know how to create them in 3D and how to create models and textures and everything that you need, basically. So a couple of games I shipped was Crysis 3, Warface, Arena of Fate, Rise, Homefront, Star Citizen, and this thing we are talking about today, the VR Score. Which was the first VR experience that I designed, and it was also a linear VR experience, meaning that there's no direct game input. So it was purely about telling a story in VR and trying to wow people with what's possible with this new technology. So a couple of artworks that I made, you know, just stuff that I made in the past, so you kind of know the kind of artworks I like to make. It's typical monster, space marines, pinups, cars, more pinups, robots, strange architectural stuff, more cars, more pinups, moving pinups, space marines, and characters. So I'm a long-time character modeler. And yeah, as you see, I come from a very broad artistic background doing various stuff, mostly character work. But also, I always like to tell stories with images. So, you know, a couple of artworks that I made are, you know, you can interpret something and the composition is interesting about just trying to tell a little bit more than a model shot of a prop or so. You know, it's, I always wanted to make slightly more with the characters and the worlds that I created. So in this particular talk, it's about the demo called VR Score, but we actually always internally like to call it the Sky Harbor VR demo, because Sky Harbor is the name of the IP that I, like the universe that I created for this particular project. So we're gonna take a look at the Sky Harbor demo. It's like 5 minutes. I have it as a video, so you can all see what it was about. Probably some of you have seen it, or maybe we can ask, who knows the VR Score, VR experience? Okay, so a few of those. Yeah. So for the other ones, we just have a look, and so that we are all on the same page pretty much. Afterwards, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the project pitch, so how a project like this is started. Like afterwards, the production phase and the lessons learned. So this is going to be interesting about because it was all new, right? It's all new to us and to myself as well. So I want to give you a bit of experience that I made during the production phase. And afterwards, my most interesting topics, I think, are the narrative direction and also the audio direction. About this one, because it was very interesting for me as a director, directing the whole project, as well as from the art side, as well as from the narrative side, but also as a director, you have a lot of saying in the audio direction, although you have a specific audio director who takes over various projects. But as a director of the project, you get, of course, asked, how do you want the music to be, or stuff like this. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this one as well, what tricks you can use to actually make your VR experience more outstanding. And in the end, we have some time for questions maybe, and I'm happy to answer anything you would like to know. So let's just have a look at the VR score. It's something like 4.5 minutes, I think it is.
Sky Harbor Maintenance Droid 259-17. You are now online.
Yeah, maybe if you can make it slightly louder.
This is Sky Harbor Control. Maintenance Droid Group, you are entering the combat zone. Maintenance Group, I have a visual on you now. Initiating automated landing sequence. We are under attack, ground patrol bastards. We have to defend the sleeper. 407, reverse course. You're cutting off inbound droids. 407, directed. I have no control. Maintenance group, control systems online. Abort auto landing. Abort! This is Sky Harbor Control. Mayday! Mayday! Heavy damage. Maintenance group lost. Defense systems offline. Communication.
Thundering hailstones. This does not look good. Hello? Am I the only one? Number 17, are you online? You're pinned under the wing strut. We need to get out of here. Ah! Sorry. And you're still stuck. Ground patrol! We're done for. Nice try, you piece of scrap metal. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, all right. Oh, scrap. Let me try to pull you loose again. Now what? Rust and rain. What are we gonna do? The main turret is offline. The crown carrier's coming down. I'm just a maintenance droid. All I know is how to fix things. I can fix this. You wait here. Oh, right. Never mind. I'll be right back. If this works. Reinforcements! These guys can get you loose.
Looks like you droids can use some muscle. Solid work, 21. But we have another problem.
Stone giant.
The sleeper is awake. We should go now.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it.
Achieved.
So there's a lot of stuff going on in this demo, and it was, as you probably can imagine, was very challenging to come up with all of this and to actually execute it. So, but before this all started, I think it's interesting to to go back a few steps. So for the project pitch, was the company Basemark that is known for creating benchmarks for testing your PC. There were a need for a new benchmark, but this time for testing VR power, if your machine is powerful enough. So they came to Crytek for saying, like, we need something visually awesome. Can we make some kind of collaboration, pretty much? So, and at that time, I was already working on my IP Sky Harbor, which came completely from my side, so I didn't have the task to do this. I just wanted to to push all the assets we made and just to create something more connected like an IP, because I really like to do this. So because this wasn't used, it was like, hey, why don't we can we just make something with this IP here, So they were looking at all my artworks and so like, yeah, this could be cool. And the basic guidelines, we have no budget, we have no time, we have no people, and we have no support. This was, it's a typical project pitch, it's like, wouldn't it be amazing? And you say, yeah, let's do it. And they're like, yeah, okay, but there's a little catch. We have no time. So there were a couple of people, I don't know which project we were actually working on some games back then. But obviously we have game teams, and they're divided in different areas, and they have their managers, and they don't want to give the people away, so, and yeah, no time and all of this. And I think the whole demo that you saw, we made in something like 3.5 months from start to finish. So this was pretty crazy. But I really wanted to push this, and we had a handful of people, like the core people, and a little bit, we could steal some guys from different teams for this to make it happen. So before that, I was designing the Sky Harbor universe. So as I said, all of these artworks were kind of there. And it all started with this image pretty much. And this is a model I made to actually test Blender. So I modeled this in Blender and textured this with Mudbox at this time. I just wanted to test a different workflow because this was one of my last assets I made at Crytek before I left to Star Citizen. And I had some time. I said, like, okay, let's try some technology here. And the beauty of this is very, very highly detailed. So, and I called it the Brunhild, with a nice logo of a Viking lady next to it carrying a bomb. Yeah. So that was really a fun project, Also from the design, you see like this thing will never fly, but it looks like an airship on the first sight. So I wanted to add a touch of fantasy to it, and not something super realistic, but with a realistic look. And you can see, if it's good on the screen, so you can see all the details, all the little bumps and the bolts and nuts. So everything is super detailed. So this was kind of just a proof of concept that this is possible, and this is all in real-time rendered, So that was pretty cool. And when the time came that after Star Citizen, I was contacted for joining the Film Engine or Cinebox project, and I was building up on this spaceship because we had this already and thought like it's cool. So I was painting this concept by thinking like what could be like some kind of harbor or like a platform where the spaceship could be standing on. How would the environment look like? So this was the first sketch I made. And I quickly realized it would be even more cooler if the whole thing is flying in the air, like everything would be above the clouds. So I made some outline sketch of like some big carrier, added some bit of shading and some Google Sky underneath, and voila, then you have your concept art. And I thought like, okay, this thing is called the Sky Harbor. So this is a harbor where all the little airships could land on and they get fueled up and repaired and stuff like this. This was the basic idea. And I like to make things detailed, so I broke it down into different sections, how the ship would actually be working. So that it's like, there's a little bit of a logic to it. Then I continued with, you've seen this one also in the demo. This is the Kriemhild. You've seen this in this demo. This is like just the continuation of the design style, And the more you work on these, you develop a specific design, and this later becomes a design language. That's interesting for all the art-interested people, where you can identify this. And this turned into this key art where I was imagining this big sky harbors flying over the clouds and there's little ships around it, and you just have a crowded scene over the sky with like big, massive ships flying around. And then I designed my first character, and this one is the one you've seen in the demo, the little helper bot. And I went for a design that was kind of very slim, so he shouldn't be very robust. It's just a typical little robot that could do various tasks, but it's not very powerful. And one of our character artists back then made this also in CryEngine and made this nice little CG model. So this was kind of a start that we had already before the VR project came into place. I developed some more characters just for the exploration of possible outfits and stuff like this. And on the very right, you can see actually that I thought of a much bigger robot, and this also made it into the VR demo. And this was completely unexpected at this point, you know. So I was just imagining the universe, and we could use a lot of stuff and actually put it in there. Also made some a pilot, like a female pilot, and painted some further concepts for this, also much more detailed. We actually used some of this at FMX last year, but this is a different story. You know, it was just cool to expand the universe and to think of different stuff. And as you see, some paintings I paint more detailed, and some I make more loose just to get an impression. And last but not least, the stone giant, which is here a concept, and you can maybe see the little ship next to him, the Brunhild. So this was one of the sketches, and I made another sketch of how it would look like when these things would approach a sky harbor, kind of. So these were my initial ideas. And at the end of this, I made like a design document where I pretty much collect all the stuff and write a lot of different things about the universe. So I made some more sketches, and I wrote a complete story about the background, about the characters, what the stone giants are, and what the sky harbor is, and what the Brunhild is, and stuff like this. So I can send this around to artists, so that all the people on the project are on the same page pretty much. So this was very helpful. When somebody new comes in the team and I have to explain everything again, I can just handle on the design document and say like, take a look at this, and then we already have a good kickstart for this. So, because the reason I do this also is because I knew exactly when you work on something like this and it turns out to be good or successful, you want to continue working on this, and then you better know how to go on. You know? So all the things I designed in advance, like the stone giant and all the robots, they all have a backstory, and why this fight in there happens, there's actually a reason for this. And you don't get to experience this in this VR demo because it doesn't matter, the focus is on something else. But if we were to continue, I could exactly continue where I left off, because everything has already a backstory, you know, and you can way easier build up on this instead of thinking, oh, what are these stone giants now? What are we doing with this? So this was the reason why I designed this in this detail level pretty much. And then came the VR storyboard. So probably everybody of you knows, like for movies, you make storyboards. You just try to explain the movie with little images, so it just speeds up the process. And the first thing you notice is that a classic storyboard is designed for one specific camera shot only. So I was like, all right, let's start, you know, and then like, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't work at all because VR has no framing, you know. So my motivation went down, you know, and this leads to the first paradox. So in VR, you give the audience the view to look wherever you want, you know, and the director say like, I don't want you to look wherever you want, you know, I just want you to look exactly here. You know? So this is where it becomes strange for a director. How can you actually control these people to look where you want as a director? And so the first idea was of a 360 radar that shows something what's around you. This was, it's kind of the first step of a solution, you could say. So here's one page of the storyboard I painted. And you can see on the first frame that on the left side, you see this little radar going on that shows the scene from the top view. And on the, can you see this pizza slice there? This is like your field of view. Yeah? So this is what you're currently looking at. And what you're currently looking at is this thing on the right. And you see the robot who's totally pointing behind you and is saying like, oh my God, look behind you, pretty much, you know. And then when you're looking at the storyboard and you look at the top frame, you see that at the very back, some black spot pretty much, but it's supposed to be the Kreml, is behind you right now. So the next frame is that we turn to the left, or I want the viewer to turn to the left. And then we have 180 degrees turned around, and you can see this being displayed with this field of view angle. And you can still see the airship. And now the frame has changed that we also see the airship pretty much. And then there's some additional text, what's going to happen in the frame. And with this way, I made the complete storyboard, and it was like 13 pages, and it was pretty much taken one-to-one for this. And this was actually pretty good. I kind of knew what I wanted to show anyway. I was thinking of the big elements that could be cool in VR, and I painted it down, and I think I made the whole storyboard in one day. And we signed this off and said, like, okay, let's go into production with this. So this was, this is not normal. This was pretty much exceptional for this to sign it off so quickly. But yeah, we kind of had lots of fun doing this and made quick decisions. And then we came to the production phase. So then it was like, okay, we know the story, we know the universe, now let's make it with nobody in the team. So we had to, you know, develop something. And a couple of things that is very important is work with a proper and solid game engine. So at that point, CryEngine is not really known for its user friendliness. And at that point, we had a very experimental branch. So new features were added and kind of tested, and we were working with this one. So you could expect a lot of crashes and stuff like this. And this can be really a deal breaker for you when you're working on a VR project, because I like to combine this with the next ones. Expect massive technical problems, and also expect critical design challenges. So when you're working on VR, because it's completely new, you will get technical problems no matter what. So you want to be sure that the engine you're working on, you can kind of rely on this, you know, and that you're not in an experimental branch like we were, where everything, you know, could be destroyed very quickly. So the design challenges as well, they will arise quickly while you're painting a storyboard. You think like, wouldn't it be nice we just do it like this? And everyone is like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And then you implement it, and then you realize, wait a minute, something's not right. Or how do we solve this actually? And for example, this is first person, the VR demo, and you are one of these helper bots yourself. So you can look down and you see your body being stuck in this wreckage from this glider. So while this is easy to implement, this is nothing else from a first-person shooter, the audience has complete movement and head control. So while you're looking at your body, you could pretty much stand up and have an outer body experience and see yourself lying there. You know, because we can't, you know, have people at the booth who are holding you down, like don't move with this one. So this was one of the challenges. How do we avoid this? And we, the body has a full IK system that the body moves with the camera, but once you move too far, the image turns black, and there's like a red grid which indicates don't do this. This is pretty much an easy challenge, and people get this very quickly. They just look around, and when you're going too far, you're like, oops, okay, I shouldn't do this. And this is totally accepted, and people are totally fine with this. So this was one solution of this one, and depending on what you're working on, you will get a lot of these for like, sounds easy on paper, but once you're on it, like, oh, we didn't thought of this one. And then again, back to the engine and the technical problems, this all kind of is a very, very big issue. So you really need to be sure. And afterwards, the early testing with people not involved in the project. So especially for me as a director, you get quickly blind for this because you think like, of course, everyone will get that this is this and super easy. But I'm totally in the IP and such, you know, same with people on the team. But it's important, same as in a 2D movie, to do a previs, to make this the blocking. And once you have something that looks like something, show it to people. And we had a lot of people who were interviews, they had interviews and just come in and they had no idea about anything. You just grab them and say like, hey, look at this, and tell me what you think about it. So totally not connected to anything. And you can get pretty good feedback of this for like, I didn't get at all what this character was doing, you know, and we're like, okay, so why is this? And then you can maybe try to fix it in an early stage. And then there's one thing that don't add too many experimental features, like I did, because I wanted to add a lot of stuff to this, and we somehow made it happen. But the experimental features we had what was at first the cloud rendering of all the beautiful clouds. This was not working at all when we started, but I said, like, we need really cool clouds for this. So we had somebody working on this. And the next one was pretty much the destruction of the big Sky Harbor, because this was with an Alembic cache, so that when all the geometry needs to be stored where it breaks down and falls apart, and it had to look massive and cool. And this is very challenging for VR when trying to achieve 90 FPS, that you have a lot of simulation going on and something like this. So this was kind of experimental if it runs at 90 FPS. And the next one, that the whole demo had to be DirectX 12. But we were working on DirectX 11, and nobody ever has worked on DirectX 12. So I can recommend not doing this. You know, it's possible, but it's good to have one experimental feature, which is like the goal of this, and then focus on this. And this was really, as I said, it comes to the beginning, you will experience a lot of massive technical problems, and the less experimental stuff you have, the better, pretty much. So also we made motion capture, but as we had no budget, we made some in-house mocap. And we had a very early setup, and we see our lead cinematic guy, Joe, and he was playing the main robot and also had to do the main demo pretty much. So he had to make everything on this. And in the movie Planet of the Apes, there was, you know, big gorillas and other apes. They were driven by this nice prosthetics that we've seen there, that they were trying to capture the long arms or so. You know, they're like, hey man, we can do this too. We just use some table legs. That's no problem. So we made Joe walk like an ape. And you can see in the background that more and more technical artists were gathering around the computer saying, like, this is not looking good, because it didn't work at all. You know. And actually, I don't know if you can see it, but the guy who was sitting like, he's the one that had to hand animate all of the apes later. Yeah. So it was a nice try, but actually what was possible is that we were able to use this as a base. So we could import it, and it looked a bit weird, but at least you get something like a pacing going on. So me as a director could say, like, okay, now is the time when the big gorilla robots should be arriving. And at least we had already something, that like an initial movement. So it helped pretty much for everything for a base, but really everything was kind of hand animated, but the mocap helped definitely for the initial previs. And there's also something like the big ape, when it comes out of the spaceship, he's like throwing away one of these big barrels to show his strength, you know, he's like just smashing it away. And I thought, hey, we can just mocap this as well. It's awesome. It's pretty cool. You know? And it's actually worked, you know, it's so simple. But sometimes you don't need massive budgets, you know, we were just a passionate team, and we really wanted to try things out and see how it works. And it worked, as I said, as a base, and the animator had at least something to look at, where I said, like, let's do it like this. So, of course, the asset production is something that was very difficult as well, and we outsourced a lot of stuff. So the assets were made somewhere else. And the rest of the assets I modeled myself. And I also did the lighting for pretty much the whole demo. And I also modeled the stone giant in the background, had to experiment a little bit how I made all the trees. They're very super low poly trees with one polygon pretty much. Very simple stuff. And yeah, I also modeled this destruction area and the glider and stuff like this. So it was kind of a mixture. And so I learned a lot actually as well, because I also made the terrain at the very bottom, which was, some of you maybe know the software World Machine. And I had no idea about this, and I learned this on the weekend pretty much, and then tried to make the assets with this happen. So this was kind of cool that everything went together with the assets from outsourcing and my own assets, which is kind of an interesting thing when you're the art director and the concept artist and the modeling artist in one person. You can sign off your own productions, you know, and say like, good job. And just things get a lot faster, you know, because you don't have the communication area. I just speak with myself, you know, and then do all the models and the artworks, and then you can get a lot of progress. But of course, it's also a very time-consuming job for that. So let's come to the narrative direction, which is the interesting part, because for me, I wanted, of course, to tell a little story with this. And there's actually a lot of stuff happening, and I expected that people not get everything, but it's designed to experience it multiple times. And when you know the core line, you could look at something else maybe, and then discover something new. So these are all like additional elements that are not critical for the main storyline, but it's just nice to see when you see the second time, like, hey, I didn't notice that actually this and this is happening over there. So the very first thing is that VR storytelling is completely different than traditional film narration. And this is because, of course, of one of the reasons I said in the beginning is you don't know where the people are looking at. And they have the freedom to look and pretty much also to move wherever they want. So this was created pretty quickly that we needed to think of something, how to fix this. And as a result of this, there's a high chance that the audience misses important story beats. And this is, of course, a disaster for a director when you plan a reveal or something like this and people are not looking. You know? So you have like the best scenes and people are like, oh, look at this bird over there. You know? And then they turn around and like, did something happen? You know? And I've seen different approaches on how to solve this. So some people were actually stopping the action when you're looking away. This was also an interesting idea that something happens and you look away and the animation just stops. And just when you look back, it continues. So you never miss something, but it pretty clearly to me breaks the immersion. You know, when you have like different combat scenes, people are like in the last fighting moves and they're like, you know, look around and then you look back and like, what's up? And then, yeah, it's just the final strike, you know. So it can be helpful maybe for certain things, but I wouldn't recommend it for everything. And I thought of a couple of things that I'm going to tell you a bit, but it also is connected to one of the issues that you can't change when people just don't want to look at it. You know, when they're like not interested, it's like as if somebody talks with you in person and he just turns around, you know, it's like, it's kind of an unusual behavior, but you can't change things like this. So when people are like completely focused on a butterfly flying around and they don't care at all about the story, then let them just enjoy whatever they see. Maybe they like it as well, but then you can't change it pretty much. So you always have to have the base foundation that people want to see the story right now. And the first thing was the introduction of an Onset Director. So as you can see in the demo, we have the little helper bot who's always very close at your face, and he's totally pointing and saying what's happening. And you try to make this in a kind of subtle way, but also sometimes pretty obvious. But this pointing is incredibly powerful. And this is what we noticed when we had these people playing the VR demo. You know, we had our lab coats on, you know, and we had some flipboard where we're taking notes. And whenever you could see the people pointing, all the heads were instantly going there. So this was a very effective tool to make people look in the direction. And because the guy is always very close to you, you will always hear his voice louder, and he will often be in the frame, so you tend to look at the person. So this is a very good idea to have somebody steering you through the VR demo. And then something that we developed, and I hadn't planned it in the beginning, as you also seen in the storyboard, is the key elements. They should be playing in the 90-degree starting angle. And this is super important. When you remember my storyboard, I had the robot pointing and he was saying like, look behind you. And then I was writing, you turn 180 degrees around, because I thought it would be awesome to use all the spectrum of the VR, right? But actually it didn't work out, because most of your people are sitting in a chair, and on the VR headset we have a long cable, and it's actually very difficult to turn 180 degrees around. So the starting angle, so where the VR demo kicks in, the audience will always remember that this is like 0 degree, this is the home base. You know, so they will always refer back to it as the initial starting point. So it's wise then to always play it in the 90, 100, 120, something like this area, so that you don't have to turn around quickly. However, this can be different when you have a sitting or a standing experience. So this kind of ties together. When you're standing, you can turn around much easier. But for a sitting experience, I highly recommend to play it in this 90-degree angle, and just add some ambient or nothing pretty much in the background, which reduces kind of the idea of VR, but also it helps just telling the story easier. So you have to see where kind of the balance is between this one. And again, then there's prepared that audience will not understand. It's like something like 30% of your story, like no matter what you do. So an advice from my side is there to make it kind of easy to understand, very simple. And I actually had it firstly different planned, that the little helper robot, that he would die at the end. And he would go into this massive turret and shoots the big sky harbor coming down. But then the whole turret explodes. And with the turret, the robot. As if he sacrificed himself to rescue you. And while this sounded okay on paper, it was pretty clear that because the turret was so far away and the robot became smaller and smaller, nobody got it. And I didn't want anyone to say, like, taking off the headset and say, like, nice VR experience, but where's the robot? He died, didn't you see? Like, no. So this is a pretty big narrative highlight of the story, And when, like, pretty much nobody will get this is obviously not what you want as a narrator. So it took this out, and the robot came back and said, like, I'm fine, all good, don't worry. And an additional feature or a helpful tool is to give enough time between story beats and establishings. So story beats in movies these days are pretty fast, and narratives also, establishing shots are pretty quick as well. So when you open a shot, you have maybe like 1 second of a castle, and the next scene you're already inside the castle, and this was the establishing. Now in VR, however, this doesn't work because there's so much going on and people are totally overwhelmed right now by what they're seeing. Especially with this universe where like all the ships are flying around and there's just so much going on. So if you were just completely starting with like, oh my God, everything's exploding, people are just overwhelmed. So my establishing shot actually it's not a direct shot, it's just nothing happens. And this was something like 15 seconds. When you wake up on this platform, the robot is lying on the ground already, but pretty much nothing important is happening. So people can look around and just trying to realize where they are, what's this, what's that, okay. And after 15 seconds, the robot wakes up and says like, oh, my head hurts and stuff like this. So, because then it's a time when they can pick up new information. And this is true for all the story beats. You have to clearly reduce the tempo, except you are at something where people look at it right now, then something more faster can happen. But this is very different from traditional filmmaking, that the story beats and the establishings are completely different. And in combination with this, I used a visually self-explaining set. So while I don't want people to look 180 degrees behind them, because we figured out this doesn't really work, and we don't want people to feel as if something could be behind them and they would miss something. I have sometimes when I use VR and I just want to see everything, so you tend to look around and maybe something happens behind me. No, you don't want to miss something. This is why the destroyed glider that you crashed with, I made it that he kind of blocks pretty much your back view. So when you turn 180 degrees around, you see that your view is pretty much blocked by rubble and destroyed metal and stuff like this. So as an audience, you quickly get the idea, okay, nothing will ever happen here. So the audience, their subconscious kind of realizes here will never something happen interesting. So we can go back to the home angle and experience this in this 120 degree angle. So, and I found this very useful, that self-explaining set with like at the front where all the fire was and the big crane, it was just visually more interesting. So people just look at this often, while when you turn around, it was kind of boring, and this is intentionally designed like this. So these are really things that help for the narrative direction. And as a last thing is, of course, 360 audio, and good audio design will help a lot. And this is the next thing that brings me to audio direction. So just as a last point, how audio can improve the experience. And audio is actually pretty classical when it comes to traditional filmmaking. It pretty much works the same. So we have an instant immersion boost with all these spaceships and the fire and stuff like this. You just feel much more immersed in the VR experience. There's nothing new about this, so this totally works. And also the reason why it's so important, that you also can tell ambient storytelling. So when you hear these ships flying, or maybe an explosion and the ship is crashing, even when the screen is still black, you get to know some information, right? So when the sound effects, they can tell a story pretty much without seeing anything. So, and when you combine this with the actual story you want to tell, this can be just much more effective. And this is also a tool to control the audience. So when the spaceship arrived that was going to shoot you pretty much, the robot was pointing, but there was also a kind of very obvious sound effect. It was very high frequency, like some scanning sound. And because it was kind of louder, and you could hear it, and this is where 360 audio comes into play. You could hear it on, like, when you look to the left and you hear it on the right side. People just turn around to it, like, where does the sound come from? So this can be a very, very helpful tool, and this can be used for everything, also for speeches, you know, because the closer the objects are, the louder they get, and because you have 360 audio, when it works, it becomes very helpful that you can make people make the head turn around to your specific thing you want them to look at. And also pretty traditional, it's easier to evoke emotions. So when the Sky Harbor comes down, you make the music a bit more aggressive, and when the danger is solved, you make like uplifting music, you know, something like this. And people just realize, okay, problem solved pretty much. I can look at something else. So that was pretty good. And a fun story was actually that at the very beginning you were crashing against the Sky Harbor, and you have this flight control over your head who's saying like, oh my God, you know, we're crashing, we lost control and everything's going down, you know. And I wanted the narrator, like the speech control, to be really upset, and he was like really aggressive by saying like, oh my God, you know, it's like the worst day of your life, what's happening? So he was like screaming in the microphone. And however, at this point, my audio director at this point, he said like, no, that's totally unrealistic. Everyone, they are trained experts and they would stay totally calm. You know, it was like, what? You know, it was super funny to like, everything was burning and crashing. It's like, hello, to the left, you can see the burning Sky Harbor, you know, and we're going to crash in 10 minutes, be prepared. And I was like, this was, nothing like this would work, you know. So I said like, no, I really want them to be totally upset about this. And the other guy, he doesn't want it, so we had to fight. And actually, you know, it was like huge discussion about it. And he was so angry about it. Okay, I'm going to record your line. And he was super angry, like, oh my God, we're under control. And it was perfect take, you know, because it was just one of the director tools for making your people do this stuff. But it's easy. Or also very interesting to see how much this changed the complete picture of the VR demo. Just this, the scene is exactly the same, but just if the guy on the radio is calm or if he's totally upset, people will understand this instantly and will realize, okay, I'm in a dangerous situation, which of course I wanted to show. So, and that's pretty much it. The last thing is just like push what's possible in VR and make it outstanding. And I think this is very interesting for this particular medium, that we have a chance to make something truly to wow people. And this is why I went for things that are unexpected, like the big crushing Sky Harbor and like the massive stone giant and all the assets and all of the effects. Is kind of really to wow this, because especially right now, I think we are at a point where people get used to VR, and it's not incredibly entertaining anymore to blow up some balloons or something like this. You know, it's cool at the very first time, but VR actually offers a lot of more stuff. And this is what I wanted to try with this demo, to really think of what makes VR really cool. And one thing was the scale for me. So the stone giant and also the Sky Harbor, they felt massive. Even with a gray shaded object with no textures, it already felt massive just because of the scale. It totally works. And this is what not work in traditional movie making. You have to use tricks and techniques to make it look big. In VR, it just feels big. And this was very interesting. And of course, things that are close to your face, they just feel 3D. That's why the robot, the big one at the end, he's reaching out with the hand because it comes nicely close and it feels like you could touch them. And we actually had some people who said like, I don't want them to touch me. It's just interesting how people all react to this. But that's why I think it's important to really push the media and just to make something awesome with this. And hopefully I could help you a little bit with the insights and you know, experience that I made during this. And I think it's going to be interesting. So what else we're going to see for this. So yeah, thank you. That's it from my talk. And I think, yeah, if you want, I gladly answer some questions if there are any.
Absolutely.
Okay, the first question, technical side.
Okay.
What was the polycount or draw call count in the main scene?
Actually, there's no real draw call count. There's always we have to hit 90 FPS. Okay. Yeah? So 90 FPS, and then you just have to make it happen. The draw call count, however, is pretty low. And DirectX 12 actually offered a tool that combines all the meshes and kind of makes it one draw call. And I actually had one of the tech guys and said, like, there's two little draw calls. You know, we need to make more. It was actually funny for, like, you know, you're trying to push it down, the other one wants to push it up just to prove DirectX 12, you know. But this demo ran pretty smoothly on either 11 or 12. So we had a boost in DirectX 12, of course, in the end. But there's no real polygon limit. It's always make it as low as possible. And also lower your expectations, I can say, because you think, like, for sure this will work. And then you realize, no, man, we have to cut it down even more. And the actual helper robot, he just had like 1,000 polygons or so. It was super low poly. But right now, the displays in VR are not incredibly sharp. So you can kind of get away with this, you know. So it's a kind of a mixture. Maybe in a couple of years when everything's 8K or so, but also the machines would be better. You know? So maybe then you can compensate it somehow. But yeah. Just make it as low as possible. And 90 FPS, this was the only goal pretty much. Whatever works.
Any other immediate questions? Yeah.
Hi, Erasmus. Thanks for the great insight. I have a couple of questions, so I start with the first one. Was it intentional to only have like a passive VR experience, or did you even plan out to have more interactivity in the whole thing that's happening there?
Yes, so because it was a benchmark, it had to be repeatable in a kind of 100% same way. Otherwise, if you test your machine and you look up in the sky permanently, maybe your results would be better. So what we actually did was also record a pre-rendered camera fly-through that was the actual test for the machine. And you at yourself, it was like the free open view mode kind of. So this was not the direct test, but the test actually was on a locked camera path. So it's 100% repeatable. But also we didn't want to include too many interactions because this would be too different from the recorded camera path. So it was pretty much the same idea. And there are slight interactive elements when you directly at the start, when you look to the robots at your side, they're actually they react to you. It's like, hey, yo, what's up? You know, kind of like this. And if you don't look at them, they're not going to do this. So it's just very, very subtle animation. But it wasn't planned to add more because this was truly a linear storytelling experience. And the second one, maybe? Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Just wanted to be in everyone's field of view.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons more. We can speak later on. But the second one is like, when you think about VR, most people say, don't think about the classic medium like film is like, don't cut. So was there an intention to actually have the crash happening on screen all the time? Because you fade to black, there's a second to settle the viewer, and then you came back into the scene. Was there something like crazy screen going on where the viewers had like nausea happening because they saw the crash?
Yes. From the beginning, I wanted to have these two scenes, like the on-rail system where you're flying and the static system where you're crashed. So we had to make a cut. So we went for a fade out, and I decided let's make some crash so we have like a visible kind of stuff. Actually, some people were kind of scared of the crash and said, like, I don't want to see it. You know, how people were saying, like, nah, come on, let's do it, you know, because it kind of worked. But this is actually interesting because when you speak about nausea and stuff like this, some people, you know, it can be frightening to fly against a huge wall, you know. So it was actually something I thought about, but I left it in because I worked for the cut. But if I were to continue the demo now, I think the setting is pretty much maxed out at this point of the VR demo. So it would be, you know, you couldn't make a 20-minute VR demo and you're permanently stuck to the stuff. So I think cutting will be much more accepted also in the future for if you know VR a bit more. You will probably never make a total hard cut and like, boom, you're all of a sudden somewhere else in the castle again. Like, what's happening? So I guess a fade out and a fade in is always an easy solution. And if this totally fits the story, so it's not, you know, you could imagine several things actually. Maybe you can also switch the perspective. Now you're like the evil one, you know, and you see like just before I was at our heroes, you know, and then you fade to black and you're actually seeing what the evil side is planning, kind of like this. I think this would work. And so cuts are definitely possible, and I would use them more for longer VR demos. For this one, it worked out with this cut, but I guess fade to black and something like this is something that will work, but definitely a field of experience and to test something out. Yeah, but for now, yeah, I would stick to the fading stuff to also have this slower pacing again. Yeah.
Right, any other questions? Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So this is not specifically related to the project here, but I was just wondering, with you coming from a very diverse background, you coming from character modeling and directing and art direction and all that stuff, like how do you maintain basically momentum in all these different areas? I saw you generating concepts and 3D models, and also as an art director, I can imagine. I have this picture in my head. Art director is a person that you know, goes around a lot, talks to a lot of people, gets the best out of each person. Yeah. How do you find time to basically produce as well?
Yeah, I get this asked often sometimes, because I'm also a musician, do a lot of music and play in bands. So I have a busy schedule, you know, and I like to play several instruments and so. But somehow I never lost interest in all of this, and it helps already to spend like 15 minutes on something, and you will get better on something, you know. And maybe this week you spend on doing character modeling. Maybe next week you spend around playing guitar much more, you know. And next week you do whatever, you do painting again. And I have this constant, this constant motivation and this fire to make the best stuff possible, you know. And I really like to make all of these things and to make creative stuff. So my interest in actually pushing all my skills is kind of automatic. So I'm not sitting down and say like, oh, today I got to learn character modeling, man. No, it's just I just do it because I just love to do it, you know. And I pretty much learn everything that I need to do on my own, kind of, because sometimes people call me the one-man army, kind of, now for making stuff on my own. But this is how I just grew up. All the demos I made, I wanted that my character has textures, and I wanted him to move, and I wanted let's make a cinematic out of this, and let's add audio. Okay, I need to learn to play guitar, kind of, you know. I just couldn't change it, you know. It had to be done. No, it's just and same for art direction. I can speak with all the guys and give them advices because my experience is broad in various areas, so I can help them with various things, you know. And so this was interesting. But I think the main reason is really you just have to be super motivated to do this. You can't force yourself to do this, you know. You just do it because you love to do it. And I think it's always a lame answer, you know, like it just happens automatically. But I think it's really just the way it is, you know, when you really want. And this is, I think, true for most of all 3D artists in the world. They are 3D, or the very good ones. They're good 3D artists because they don't want to do anything else. You know? They just do it. And they didn't say like, I heard it's a lot of money that you get for 3D artists. I'm going to learn 3D art. You know, nobody said this ever. You know? So you just do it. And this is probably for all the people who are good at something. And when you have like me, multiple areas, you just try to keep up the pacing, you know. And some things you don't, I don't know the English word, but when you're not doing it and you get worse of it, kind of, you know, it doesn't happen so much somehow, you know. And later at some point you realize the areas you like most and you try to focus on this. And also it shifted. While I was super interested in 3D art and character modeling, it became obvious at some point that I wanted to go into that direction. You know, so while I was 3D artist, I had no clue about directing projects or thinking about IPs. I was just modeling pinups. Yeah. That's what I was doing all day. So, and later on, while you've seen all the areas, you say like, man, actually, I have some ideas to make it better. And because you have the experience and motivation, maybe you have some good ideas, and then it kind of evolves automatically. And then you're happy to teach the stuff to other people and say like, hey, I used to be a character artist as well. You can make it like this, and it's better. And so, and also it helps as a director to know the full pipeline, because I work with directors who had no idea about this. And they said like, we just add 50 million people and they have all like cool facial expressions, you know, and like, who's supposed to make this, you know? So it can help actually to understand the whole process of your industry, you know? So this is why this always helped me, and I never lost interest in this, and that's why I tried to push this.
Right, we have time for one last question, if there's one from the audience. Yeah, all the way back, of course.
Of course.
Don't worry, I'll come to you.
Unfortunately, I missed your lecture, so I would like to ask, when will you repeat it? First question. Second and last question, it's not for me, but how do young people come into this business? Can you give a few hints? And how difficult is this job? And the first question is the more important one. Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, I think I think it's going to be recorded, right? So yeah, so I think you can watch this later online at some point at the website. So it's not planned that I repeat this talk, but I guess you can just watch it somewhere. So that's the easy answer. It's online. And the second one, yeah, I started pretty young with this. I think at 22, which is pretty much 10 years ago. So I'm 32 now, and with 22, I had my first job as a character, like 3D artist, kind of like this. Just because I had a good portfolio, you know, I was modeling stuff and said like, you know, can you use something like this? And said like, okay. So this is where I entered the industry. It's mostly with your portfolio, your artworks that you make in your free time. So, and when you do something like this and you get to a certain level of qualities, companies get interested in you, you know, and they might contact you directly, or you just apply somewhere. And I always was lucky. I was contacted by companies if I want to work for them. Said like, okay, it's cool. And then I learned much more. When you're on actual production, you became so much better than sitting in your room at home and modeling some more pinups. You know, so this is always interesting in the, and also why I like to work with experienced guys from the industry. There's just so much more you learn about this, you know. When you have a good character artist, but he worked 8 years at home because his job was something else, he will have no experience of the overall pipeline and just the mentality of the industry. So I just stick to it and had the big luck to switch different fields. So from modeling to characters to cinematic direction and all of this. So I was lucky there. This is not usual that you switch so often the industry. Or the job pretty much. But yeah, it's just like the ways to enter the industry, as I said, the portfolio, and then just stick to the stuff you're doing and trying to get better. And this will open the doors to the next job pretty much, you know, and then you can jump from company to company or stay in one company, whatever you like pretty much. This is up to you, I guess.
Opening doors is a key word here. We've run out of time, so Erasmus, thank you ever so much for this great insight and postmortem.
Yeah, welcome.